AOC interrupts Jasmine Crockett 6 times. Her 7th line shuts her down. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez interrupted a fellow progressive 6 times in under 3 minutes, until one perfectly timed comeback exposed everything. This is the story of how escalating tension, 6 strategic interruptions, and a single devastating response turned a committee hearing into political theater and left a powerhouse congresswoman momentarily speechless. Quick question for you. In politics, which tactic backfires more, constant interruptions or silent restraint? Think about that as we walk through this clash, because the answer may surprise you. What happens when two progressive powerhouses clash in the most unexpected political theater? Last Tuesday's House Oversight Committee hearing started as routine government accountability until Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jasmine Crockett transformed it into a masterclass of political miscalculation. The hearing focused on federal agency transparency, with both representatives positioned as allies on the progressive agenda. Crockett, the sharp-tongued freshman from Texas, had prepared meticulously for her 5-minute questioning window. She'd crafted talking points targeting Republican obstruction tactics, armed with statistics showing how conservative members had blocked 17 transparency measures in 6 months. But committee dynamics shifted the moment AOC entered the room 15 minutes late, clearly agitated from a prior press conference about climate legislation. Her body language telegraphed frustration, rapid hand gestures, frequent paper shuffling, and that familiar lean-forward posture that signals incoming interruption. Here's what most viewers missed. Crockett had already anticipated potential conflicts. She'd positioned her materials strategically, keeping key documents within easy reach while maintaining eye contact with the witness. This wasn't accidental, it was tactical preparation for exactly what unfolded. The setup reveals a crucial political truth. Even allies can become adversaries when egos and timing collide. Crockett understood that committee hearings reward preparation over improvisation, while AOC relied on her signature spontaneity. This clash was inevitable. What neither representative anticipated was how their exchange would expose fundamental differences in progressive strategy, differences that would reshape their working relationship and signal broader tensions within the Democratic Party's left wing. The first interruption came exactly 47 seconds into Crockett's opening statement, a timing so precise it revealed AOC's calculated strategy rather than impulsive reaction. Crockett had barely finished her second sentence about agency stonewalling when AOC's voice cut through the chamber. "If I may add context to the gentle lady's point." This wasn't random disruption. AOC had identified Crockett's strongest argument, the 17 blocked transparency measures, and moved to co-opt the narrative before it gained momentum. Political veterans recognize this tactic: interrupt early to establish dominance, then redirect the conversation toward your preferred talking points. The maneuver initially appeared collegial, even supportive. But Crockett's micro-expressions told a different story. Security footage later revealed her slight jaw clench and the barely perceptible pause before responding. She'd spent weeks preparing this specific line of questioning, crafting each transition to build toward a devastating conclusion about Republican hypocrisy. AOC's intervention threatened to derail that carefully constructed momentum. Picture the committee room dynamics. Republican members leaning forward with interest, sensing internal Democratic tension. The witness panel. 3 agents. Directors, exchanging glances as they watch 2 progressive allies navigate unexpected turbulence. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in, recognizing the brewing conflict. Crockett's response demonstrated textbook political restraint. Instead of pushing back immediately, she acknowledged AOC with a professional nod while subtly reclaiming control. "I appreciate the representative's perspective, and I'll address that after establishing the foundational facts." Pure strategic brilliance. Former House parliamentarian Julia Richardson later noted this exchange exemplified the delicate balance between collaboration and territorial protection in committee settings. Crockett had maintained courtesy while drawing clear boundaries, a skill that would prove crucial as tensions escalated. Picture a chess master watching their opponent make an unexpected opening move. That's exactly how Jasmine Crockett processed AOC's first interruption. She paused for exactly 3 seconds, a calculated silence that spoke volumes to anyone versed in congressional power dynamics. Her fingers remained steady on her prepared notes, while her eyes maintained laser focus on the witness panel. Crockett's response revealed sophisticated political instincts most freshman representatives lack. Instead of engaging AOC's redirect, she seamlessly returned to her original questioning thread. Director Martinez, returning to the 17 transparency requests your agency received between January and June. This wasn't just persistence, it was strategic message discipline under pressure. The brilliance lay in Crockett's vocal tone adjustment. Political communication experts later analyzed the audio, noting how she subtly lowered her pitch and slowed her cadence after the interruption. This technique, borrowed from courtroom advocacy, signals authority while maintaining professional courtesy. She was essentially saying, "I acknowledge you, but I'm driving this conversation." Republican members immediately recognized Crockett's tactical superiority. Representative Jim Jordan, notorious for his own interruption strategies, was observed taking notes, a rare occurrence that suggested grudging respect for her committee room management skills. Crockett demonstrated that effective political communication requires both preparation and adaptability. She'd anticipated potential disruptions and developed contingency responses that maintained her narrative control. Preparation trumps improvisation every time. But AOC wasn't finished testing boundaries. Her body language, the familiar lean-in posture, increased paper shuffling, and frequent glances at the chamber clock, telegraphed mounting frustration. Political observers who knew AOC's patterns recognized these warning signs. The second interruption was already forming, and this time the stakes would be higher. Former congressional staffer Maria Santos witnessed thousands of committee exchanges during her 15-year Capitol Hill career, but she'd never seen timing this aggressive. AOC's second interruption came mid-sentence as Crockett pressed Director Martinez about delayed FOIA responses. "Director, when you say processing delays, are you referring to the— Actually, that raises an important procedural question," AOC interjected, her voice noticeably sharper than before. This interruption crossed an unwritten congressional boundary. Committee protocol allows brief clarifications between allies, but cutting off a colleague's direct questioning violates basic professional courtesy. Veteran legislators recognize this escalation. AOC had moved from supportive interjection to territorial challenge. The witness panel shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to address Crockett's incomplete question or AOC's procedural redirect. Security footage revealed telling body language shifts throughout the committee room. Democratic staffers began exchanging concerned glances, while Republican communications director Sarah Chen was observed typing rapidly on her phone, likely alerting media contacts about the brewing progressive conflict. The story was writing itself in real time. Crockett's response demonstrated escalating sophistication. She acknowledged AOC with a measured nod, then delivered a masterful redirect. "I appreciate the representative's procedural concerns, which I'll address after receiving Director Martinez's complete response to my substantive question." This wasn't just committee management, it was public chess played at the highest level. The exchange revealed how interruption frequency changes power dynamics. One interruption suggests collaboration. Two interruptions signal competition. Crockett recognized this shift and adjusted her strategy accordingly, maintaining courtesy while drawing firmer boundaries. Strategic patience was becoming her weapon. But AOC's frustration was building visibly. Her next move would abandon all pretense of collaborative questioning, transforming their exchange from professional disagreement into something far more personal and politically damaging. What happens when interruptions stop sounding like clarifications and start resembling dominance plays? By the third cut-in, AOC had shifted tone entirely. As Crockett pressed Director Martinez about internal emails documenting systemic redactions, AOC cut across sharply. "Point of order, is the gentle lady categorizing unverified correspondence as evidence?" This was no longer procedural. AOC's phrasing implied Crockett was misrepresenting facts, undermining not only her argument but also her credibility before the committee and the public record. For a freshman lawmaker, such a challenge could be reputationally crushing. The chamber grew audibly tense. Pens down, whispering halted, even staffers froze mid-gesture. Communication specialists later dissected this moment, noting how AOC's tempo increased by 18% compared to her earlier interjections. Speed and delivery is often used in debate not to persuade but to overwhelm. In essence, she was trying to flood the zone, a classic rhetorical tactic designed to destabilize an opponent's rhythm. Anyone who's dealt with workplace interruptions recognizes the effect: derailed thoughts, disrupted flow, and the subtle undermining of authority. The difference is that congressional hearings preserve every word in the official transcript, magnifying the stakes tenfold. Crockett's controlled pivot showed remarkable professional discipline. She calmly clarified, "My reference is directly to records provided under official discovery, which I'll continue unpacking." By reclaiming authority through specificity, she neutralized the credibility attack without raising her voice. Calm clarity beats defensive reaction, yet Crockett's composure only seemed to fuel AOC further. Observers described the Congresswoman's restless shifting in her chair, almost signaling impatience for the next chance to seize the floor. The battle lines were unmistakably drawn. The fourth interruption was inevitable. By the fourth interruption, the atmosphere in the oversight chamber had shifted from tense debate to open confrontation. As Crockett pivoted toward exposing resource mismanagement within the agency, AOC's voice cut through again, this time louder, sharper, and utterly dismissive. "We cannot allow misleading frameworks to dominate the record." This wasn't just about controlling narrative anymore. AOC had moved into reputational undermining, a dangerous escalation in congressional hearings. Interrupting once may look collegial, twice competitive, 3 times aggressive. By the fourth, it signals hostility. Every member and witness present understood that dynamic. Cameras captured subtle smirks from Republican lawmakers, recognizing the left-leaning alliance fracturing in real time. Political psychologists later drew attention to Crockett's nonverbal control. Instead of leaning forward to match AOC's combative stance, she leaned back. That physical choice signaled self-possession to everyone in the room, a silent tactic often more powerful than words. She let AOC's outburst linger, forcing the committee to register the breach of decorum without any retaliation. It's a technique courtroom attorneys deploy during cross-examinations. Do nothing, let your opponent's intensity hang unanswered, and allow the silence to reframe the outburst as an overreach. In politics, patience isn't weakness, it's leverage. Crockett eventually resumed with a measured statement, reminding the record, "Respectfully, the documents are verified through House procedure." Her phrasing neutralized AOC's claim while reasserting legitimacy. Silence and precision can dismantle volume. But suppression wasn't victory, it was fuel. Observers spotted AOC shaking her pen repeatedly, her frustration written plainly across her expression. The air in the chamber thickened with anticipation because everyone knew the next interruption wouldn't just challenge Crockett, it would attempt to silence her. What happens when a heated back and forth evolves into a spectacle for the cameras? That's exactly what the fifth interruption created, a moment where AOC's persistence stopped being strategic and began looking like performance. As Crockett laid out specific numbers on budgetary allocations, citing $42 million unaccounted for across fiscal quarters, AOC cut in again. "Excuse me, but can we clarify if this line item is even accurate?" This posed 2 major problems. First, AOC wasn't challenging Republicans anymore. She was questioning her own Democratic colleagues' competency in data presentation. Second, every word entered permanently into the congressional record. That meant Crockett's data point and AOC's public doubt carried equal weight in media playback, opening the door for partisan spin. Conservative outlets instantly clipped the moment, framing it as progressives at war over the facts. What shifted here was audience perception. Committee members no longer saw this as procedural jousting. They began reacting like spectators. Notably, Representative Byron Donalds leaned back in his chair, smirking toward colleagues as if enjoying the Democratic fracture unfolding live. Political theater had officially overtaken legislative function. Think of a workplace meeting where 2 colleagues argue so intensely that the boss stops caring about the subject and starts focusing on their rivalry. Progress is lost, but the drama lingers. That's what the committee chamber had become. Crockett's calm correction, "The figure is drawn directly from GAO submissions, Mr. Chairman," restored factual grounding. By invoking the Government Accountability Office, she leveraged institutional credibility over personal defense. Facts carry more weight when anchored to authority, but Crockett's composed rebuttal only heightened the spectacle. AOC's pen tapping turned into audible desk raps, signaling impatience bordering on open exasperation. The sixth interruption wasn't far behind, and this time, her mistake would cost her. Every escalating conflict eventually reaches a breaking point, and AOC's sixth interruption was exactly that. Crockett had just begun connecting her budgetary evidence to transparency failures when AOC interjected again, almost shouting, "Mr. Chairman, I must object. These are misleading framings that mischaracterize the data." Unlike her earlier cut-ins, this objection backfired dramatically. By formally objecting, AOC inadvertently granted Crockett a stronger platform. Committee rules required Crockett to be given time to clarify and place her documents into the record. What had begun as an attempt to silence her instead amplified her evidence. The interruption shifted power from AOC to Crockett before everyone's eyes. Political strategists later dissected this moment as a textbook overplaying your hand. Up to this point, AOC framed her interruptions as protective oversight, but framing Crockett's presentation as misleading alienated Democratic colleagues, many of whom visibly grew uncomfortable. Several leaned toward Crockett in quiet shows of solidarity, a subtle yet powerful signal of shifting loyalties in the room. Television analysis captured something the live audience missed. While Crockett's composure remained steady, AOC's speaking tempo spiked while her word choice grew less precise. Speed and vagueness combined make arguments appear defensive, not authoritative. Intensity without clarity always backfires. Imagine debating a colleague who keeps cutting you off. The moment they raise their voice to challenge your integrity, bystanders lose sympathy. The aggressor stops looking strong and starts looking insecure. Crockett's reply, calmly reaffirming, "The GAO documents are verifiable and I welcome them," entered into the record, transformed AOC's attempt to discredit her into a moment of validation. She had turned conflict into credibility building, and with 6 failed interruptions behind them, the table was set for the 7th and final blow, one Crockett had been silently saving. By now, it's clear this wasn't just another heated committee exchange. It was a masterclass in strategy, patience, and political branding. But before we dive into the pivotal 7th moment that flipped the entire narrative, pause and consider this. How often do audiences actually get to see the hidden mechanics of political confrontation laid bare? That's exactly why we build these breakdowns, to show you not just what happened, but how and why it mattered. If you've ever found yourself yelling at the screen during a hearing thinking, why won't they just let them finish? This analysis is designed precisely for you. So here's the deal. If you're finding value in understanding these strategic plays, how interruptions shift power, how composure wins credibility, and how political theater often overshadows policy, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll always catch our deep dives right as the critical moments unfold. Knowledge of tactics is power in politics. And let's make this interactive. Drop your take in the comments. Do you believe AOC's interruptions were a calculated tactic gone wrong, or pure frustration spilling out in real time? Your perspective might spark the debate that defines the comment section for this video. Because what's coming next is the sharpest reversal yet. After 6 failed interruptions, Crockett finally unleashed her carefully timed 7th line, a single response that didn't just push back, it shut the entire exchange down. Let's break down exactly how she did it. Every confrontation has a turning point, and in this hearing, it came with Crockett's 7th response, the moment she shifted from defensive brilliance to outright dominance. After enduring 6 interruptions, she finally seized the room with a line so precise that it froze AOC mid-motion and redirected the entire chamber's attention. The lead-up couldn't have been more dramatic. AOC was leaning forward, pen tapping like a metronome of impatience, her body angled toward the chairman, clearly ready for another objection. Crockett glanced up briefly, tightened her posture, and unleashed her line. "With respect, I yield only to the facts, and the facts are verified." That single phrase accomplished what hours of sparring never could. First, it framed Crockett as tethered to institutional truth, not personal argument. Second, it placed AOC in the awkward position of appearing to challenge not her colleague, but the very legitimacy of verified government. Documents. For fellow Democrats silently uncomfortable with the tension, it offered a dignified exit. They could rally behind facts without choosing sides. Communication experts later highlighted Crockett's rhetorical genius. She used a contrast structure, I yield only to the facts, to shut down interruptions without insulting AOC. It was assertive without hostility, authoritative without arrogance. Precision makes words unshakable. Think about moments in your workplace when someone keeps undercutting you. Instead of arguing emotion for emotion, anchoring your voice to undeniable evidence makes your point bulletproof while exposing your interrupter as combative. Crockett's seventh response is proof that credibility isn't defended with louder voices. It's secured with sharper framing. She turned congressional combat into a standing lesson. Control the frame, you control the fight. Silence carries weight in politics, and for the first time during this hearing, AOC fell silent. Crockett's seventh response landed with such finality that even Ocasio-Cortez, renowned for her quick comebacks and sharp tongue, hesitated. That pause spoke volumes. Cameras zoomed in as AOC leaned back, her pen, which had been rhythmically tapping seconds before, now motionless on the desk. Her eyes shifted, not toward Crockett, not toward the witness panel, but directly at the chairman, as though searching for procedural footing. What made this silence so striking was its contrast. Just minutes earlier, she had been dominating space with interruptions, but now, the chamber seemed to reclaim balance in real time. Strategically, this was damaging. Political rivals seize on hesitation as weakness, especially when it follows aggressive overreach. By pausing, AOC inadvertently validated Crockett's authority. Republican members wasted no time whispering among themselves, no doubt preparing talking points about fractures on the Democratic side. And for progressive colleagues, the moment emphasized a truth they all understood but rarely voiced: control of T. He narrative can change in an instant. Media trainers later noted an important point. AOC's silence wasn't just reaction, it was recalibration. Politicians know that over-talking after a decisive verbal strike risks digging the hole deeper. Pausing helped her avoid compounding the loss, but it also cemented Crockett's win in the public eye. Sometimes silence concedes the battlefield. Think of an argument where someone lands a point so irrefutable that your only logical option is to stop talking. Everyone in the room remembers not just the line that landed, but the quiet that followed. AOC's reaction underscores a crucial communication rule. Silence can either project composure or signal defeat. The difference depends entirely on who made the last credible move. The silence between AOC and Crockett may have lasted only seconds, but its ripple effect across the committee room was seismic. Witnesses, staffers, and members alike recalibrated their behavior in that instant. Politics isn't just about arguments, it's about how every observer interprets the room when the balance shifts. The panel of agency directors, previously uncomfortable with the crossfire, now leaned forward with renewed focus on Crockett, treating her as the unquestioned floor leader. Staffers, who just minutes earlier were shuffling notes nervously, began sliding additional documents toward Crockett, quietly signaling confidence in her steering. Meanwhile, Republicans, sensing the Democratic fracture, exchanged sly smiles and nudges, aware that they were witnessing a rare moment of public infighting among progressives. Committee hearings operate as layered theaters, substance for the record, performance for the cameras, but also signaling for alliances. Crockett's ascendance created subtle but important changes. 3 junior Democrats who had previously deferred to AOC now began murmuring their support under their breath, a move that staffers later confirmed was genuine. This matters because in legislative politics, perception of momentum often translates into actual momentum. Coalition building starts in such quiet shifts. Former committee chairs often note that room energy is a currency. In that moment, Crockett had it, and AOC didn't. Once control slips, colleagues reorient quickly to align themselves with whoever commands attention. Momentum in politics is transferable currency. Think of a workplace meeting where one colleague decisively settles a debate. The rest of the table subtly shifts toward them, reinforcing their standing without a vote ever being taken. Crockett's ability to leverage not just her words, but the chamber's shifting energy highlights a vital rule. Respect follows composure, and composure wins rooms. If committee room dynamics decide who wins in the moment, media coverage decides who wins the memory. Within hours of the hearing, clips of AOC's interruptions and Crockett's seventh-line rebuttal spread across platforms like wildfire. Yet, what was fascinating wasn't just the virality, it was how differently outlets framed the very same exchange. Progressive publications largely downplayed the clash, framing it as healthy debate among committed allies. Meanwhile, centrist networks highlighted the tension, describing it as fractures within the left. Conservative media pounced hardest, producing viral headlines like AOC silenced by fellow Democrat alongside exaggerated thumbnails of Crockett's calm expression paired with AOC mid-interruption. The exact wording G. Crockett used, "I yield only to the facts," trended on Twitter, turning into a slogan repurposed for memes. Media analysts pointed out that this was a rare reversal for AOC, who usually dominates social media narratives after confrontations. Here, Crockett became the viral star. The shift reflected something important. Online audiences increasingly reward composure over volume when clips are detached from context. The internet loves clarity over chaos. Think about how sports highlights often favor the underdog's big play over the star player's dominance. Crockett, a freshman congresswoman with far less name recognition, suddenly had the highlight reel moment, while AOC, normally the star, looked overextended. For political figures, controlling media narrative is as important as controlling the microphone. Crockett's mastery of tone and framing gave her weeks of positive coverage, while AOC's 6 interruptions became a cautionary tale replayed far beyond Capitol Hill. And this media reshaping didn't just shift public perception. It raised uncomfortable questions within the Democratic Party itself about strategy, unity, and future leadership optics. What happens when a single committee clash ripples far beyond the hearing room? Crockett's firm but measured pushback against AOC did more than dominate news cycles. It raised urgent questions about the Progressive Coalition's unity and strategy heading into future legislative battles. Within Democratic circles, staffers quietly admitted that the face-off forced uncomfortable recalculations. AOC has long been viewed as the charismatic lightning rod of the left, capable of driving national conversations, but Crockett's performance highlighted that newer voices can seize momentum by combining preparation with composure. Strategists began asking, is the progressive bench deeper, or is it fracturing into competing brands of leadership? Behind closed doors, senior Democrats warned that such public confrontations weaken negotiating strength when dealing with Republicans. Allies who once viewed the progressive bloc as tightly aligned now saw fault lines. Political analysts signaled a critical nuance. Crockett's restrained tone positioned her as the pragmatic progressive, appealing not only to left-leaning activists, but also to moderates uneasy with AOC's combative image. This dual appeal created what one strategist called the Crockett effect, influence through calm authority rather than sheer volume. Contrasts create new leaders. The episode mirrors previous generational conflicts within political movements, where rising figures use one decisive moment to shift perception. Think of how younger lawmakers in both parties once stepped out of senior shadows by delivering a single memorable committee exchange. For politicians, coalition strength relies on balancing passion with discipline. Crockett and AOC's clash revealed that even among allies, narratives of leadership are constantly renegotiated. The lesson is clear. To maintain unity, progressives must reconcile fiery advocacy with composed credibility. Every high-stakes confrontation isn't just about who talked the loudest, it's about who executed the smarter strategy. The Crockett-AOC clash serves as a textbook case study in communication: precision versus passion, restraint versus repetition, composure versus escalation. AOC's communication style has always thrived on quick, sharp interjections and emotive appeals, the kind that resonate in viral clips. But in a structured committee setting, those same tactics can backfire. By interrupting 6 times, she transformed her passion into noise, creating the perception of being disruptive rather than persuasive. Crockett, by contrast, embraced message discipline. She stuck to planned evidence, invoked institutions like the GAO, and resisted personal escalation. In turn, the chamber and the cameras rewarded her restraint by amplifying her authority. Media coaches often teach the rule of 3 in political communication: make your point once, reinforce it twice, and stop. Beyond that, repetition becomes diminishing returns. AOC broke this rule spectacularly. Crockett, however, followed a different playbook: restraint when interrupted, strength when asserting, and precision when finishing. It wasn't just accidental, it looked rehearsed. Overexposure weakens, timing strengthens. Think of sales professionals who know when to stop talking after closing the deal. The silence sells more than the pitch. AOC oversold her position by hammering interruptions past effectiveness. Crockett sold her credibility by knowing when less was more. The strategy lesson is universal. Tailor your communication approach to the arena. What works on Twitter or in a rally doesn't translate the same way inside a congressional chamber. Crockett's adaptability validated her preparation, while AOC's over-reliance on old tactics exposed limitations. No political confrontation exists in a vacuum. To truly understand the Crockett-AOC clash, we have to place it alongside other defining congressional battles where a single exchange redefined reputations and reshaped party dynamics. In 1954, Senator Joseph Welch's retort to Joseph McCarthy, "Have you no sense of decency?" ended an era of intimidation in one phrase. In 2013, Senator Elizabeth Warren built her reputation by calmly dismantling banking executives during harsh questioning, earning viral clips that positioned her as a progressive heavyweight. And in 2019, AOC herself gained national headlines with her sharp interrogations of Michael Cohen, establishing her as a rising political star. Each of these moments shared a theme: controlled precision turned into career-defining impact. What these historical parallels teach us is that reputation in politics often hinges on a single decisive moment. Crockett's seventh response now joins this tradition. Instead of chasing volume, she leaned into the very weapon used by Welch decades earlier: fact-rooted restraint. History rewards clarity more than noise. Consider how in sports, dynasties wane when new challengers bring fresh tactics. The old guard may rely on legacy strategies, but it's the emerging players who adapt and claim the spotlight. Similarly, Crockett used composure, a fresh tactic in a room accustomed to fiery theatrics, to rewrite expectations. For Democrats, this confrontation sits within a lineage of moments where internal clashes reshaped strategy. Just as Warren became the pragmatic voice during Occupy's aftermath, Crockett's moment signals generational recalibration within the progressive wing. The lesson is simple. The political stage constantly evolves, and those who adapt their style to the moment, not their legacy, shape history's judgment. The hearing may have ended that day, but the fallout lingered far longer. One sharp exchange doesn't just disappear into transcripts, it reshapes reputations, recalibrates alliances, and recalculates political capital. The Crockett-AOC clash proved no exception. In the days following, Capitol insiders noticed a subtle cooling between the two lawmakers. Where AOC had once been quick to shout out progressive colleagues on social media, Crockett's name was conspicuously absent from her posts. Meanwhile, Crockett's office reported an unexpected surge of interview requests from outlets that had rarely acknowledged her before. A single moment had shifted visibility. Crockett's voice was now being invited to define progressive messaging alongside established figures. This redistribution of spotlight raised internal tensions. Members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus faced quiet choices: double down on AOC's more combative style, or cautiously embrace Crockett's steadier, fact-driven approach. Neither figure lost influence outright, but the perception of who held the progressive megaphone became contested, a dangerous fissure with the Democratic caucus needing unified messaging against Republican opposition. Strategic consultants observed that AOC's brand of fiery activism suddenly looked less invincible when contrasted with Crockett's composed credibility. Fundraising numbers soon bore this out. Progressive donors reported spreading their contributions more evenly, testing whether Crockett could maintain momentum. Shifts in attention mean shifts in power. It's no different than corporate boardrooms, where a rising executive's breakthrough presentation can permanently alter the hierarchy. Once visibility changes, roles are quietly reassessed behind the scenes. The aftermath teaches a hard truth. Political clout is never permanent. It must be constantly defended, updated, and adjusted against rising competitors, even when those competitors are supposed to be allies. What larger truths can we extract from one explosive committee confrontation? The Crockett-AOC exchange wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a blueprint for how political communication succeeds or fails in today's hyper-documented environment. First, it highlighted the double-edged sword of passion. AOC's interruptions, while rooted in conviction, became liabilities when overused. The very intensity that made her a national figure turned into ammunition for critics when set against Crockett's poise. Second, it proved that composure can be just as powerful as fire. Crockett's choice to lean on precision and evidence, even under repeated challenges, elevated her credibility and allowed her to seize momentum without raising her voice. Political discourse in this era is less about who dominates the room and more about who controls the replay. Viral clips reward clarity, precision, and memorable sound bites. Crockett's "I yield only to the facts" distilled complex testimony into a viral-ready narrative hook, while AOC's multiple interruptions blurred into noise. In the age of replays, clarity outlasts disruption. Consider everyday disagreements, whether in meetings, classrooms, or even family debates. It's not always the loudest person who wins, but the one whose words remain quotable after the dust settles. Crockett's win was not just tactical in the chamber, it was communicative in the long-term record. For leaders, activists, and communicators everywhere, this confrontation underlines a universal truth. Respect your arena, adapt your methods, and prioritize precision over theatrics. The most enduring influence comes not from how forcefully we interrupt, but from how memorably we contribute. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about Crockett and AOC, it was about the evolving rules of political power in the 21st century. So what did we just witness? In one 5-minute exchange, Crockett turned interruption into opportunity, composure into credibility, and her words into a viral coin of the realm. AOC, normally the master of political theater, learned that passion without timing can backfire. And this lesson doesn't just apply to Congress, it applies to every conversation where credibility is currency. Compose yourself, anchor to facts, and remember, in today's replay culture, clarity is king. If you enjoyed this breakdown, stay tuned. Our next analysis covers another high-profile confrontation where one overlooked line changed the trajectory of an entire hearing.